Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Write or Die Show. I'm your host, Randi-lee. On the show, we interview other writers and we talk about mental health from their personal journeys. If you have not already hit that like and subscribe button, go ahead, do that now so that you never miss an episode. Hello, welcome to Friday night. I know it's bizarre. We never have a live episode Friday night. What? Well, guess what? I told you at the beginning of the year that things were going to be different and that we might have random episodes in the week. And here we are. We also have our cutest little co-host here on my lap, Neo, the three-legged cat. So he may or may not decide to get up from my lap, but he is definitely here to support us through the show, you know? Actually, he just wants everybody to know he has a book written about him, right? Yeah, he's a star. Anyways, let's talk about a different star of the show, Vic Lagina. Hello.
Hello there. How are you? Thanks for having me on.
I am good. How are you?
Doing great.
Well, you said you were good, but where are you visiting us from?
I live in Las Vegas, Nevada.
That's where I got married.
Oh yeah? Well, that is you and a lot of other people apparently.
Yes, but we went out to the desert. Like we didn't do it on the strip. It was all planned. We went out to the desert. There was the killer bee that got stuck in my veil. That was very scary.
Yikes.
But it was gorgeous. And the photographer, I'll never forget, the photographer goes, "All right, the sun is about set. We have 10 minutes to get all of these pictures done. And then we have zero light." And she's like, "But this is the perfect lighting." And it's like, it was like 10 minutes and boom, it was dark.
I wonder if you shot in the dry lake bed at like near Jean, Nevada, because that's where a lot of people go to shoot desert pictures.
All I know is it was past where the hills have eyes was done.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Well, there's a whole area where they shot the scene in Casino where Joe Pesci and Robert De Niro are talking to each other. Yeah, that's and I shot a lot out there during my tenure.
Yes, which we will get to.
Exactly.
But that part always sticks out because I love horror movies and my husband hates them. So when the driver was telling us and all the different sites as we went, and he said that one, my husband's like, "I don't know what that is." I'm like, "Oh, that is so exciting!" And he's like, It's a you movie, isn't it?" With his response, I'm like, "Yes, you will never see that movie in your life because that's not for you." But other than that, you live out there. So what time is it? Because you're behind me then.
It is 4:40 in the afternoon.
All right. Yes, I'm much closer to 8:00.
So you're East Coast.
Yes, I'm Eastern time zone. Up by Niagara Falls, Canada.
Okay, I've been there a few times because I went to school in Syracuse, and every now and again we would cross the border to do things. And
well, yeah, because you have tons of money when you come over here because our money is worth nothing.
Yeah,
I digress. So tell us a little bit more about who Vic is.
So for 20 years, I was a producer and a director and a cameraman in the adult entertainment business. And I started with the company that would take over the entire business. Started with them in 2004. And my career came to a screeching halt when COVID hit. And it was okay because I was hanging on by a thread, I think, at that point. So COVID fortunately put me on my misery.
Well, that is good. But more importantly, you know what is more important right now. You should remember what is more important right now.
Yeah, and I am the owner of 3 dogs that may or may not. Yeah, they may join in at some point. I'll probably see my husky will come in at some point and want to sit underneath my legs, and then the pit mix, and then maybe the Doberman will show her face.
I love that. So he's 3 years old now, the puppy. I always call him the puppy because the other 2 are 12 years old. Yeah. And when we rescued him, they go, "Well, we know his mom's a shepherd." So he came from Manitoba. Well, he didn't. His mom came from Manitoba over to Ontario while she was pregnant. Okay. And then she had the puppies here when she got here. Well, one puppy. He was the only one that she had, actually. So all they knew was that she was a shepherd. I got all their DNA tested. Oh yeah, he's got some husky in him. And yeah, that husky is strong. It's funny, the DNA is like 80 to 90% shepherd and just a little bit of husky, but that husky comes through strong every night.
Yep.
He has to yell at us to lift the couch to see his toys that he hides underneath them.
That's familiar. So Junior is his name. He was husky and part German shepherd, but he is all husky because it takes over, it dominates, and he looks like it. So
yeah, he's my guy Zenny. He very much looks quite very shepherdy. With the husky in them, like he's got the nice long fur or whatever, and the shepherd is very strong because he's got that. This is my house, and I will protect everyone on my house. His house is apparently our entire block because.
Yeah.
I know this is totally off topic, guys, but deal with it because it's puppies. When we are walking on the block. Even if we are on the other side of our block, if somebody does not acknowledge his existence, he will bark and try to get them because this is his block. But if we go 2 blocks away, he's fine. He doesn't care because that's not his house.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, your house is like all the way around the corner. We're not even close to your house, but no. We're still on his block, so it's his house.
Yeah, my girlfriend moved in July, and she had her Doberman, and so it's our Doberman now. But I sleep pretty good at night, knowing a Doberman is watching over us. Yeah,
yep.
Yeah, it's really cool.
I love it. So you said Junior is the husky's name. What are the others?
Jordan, female. She is the old gal. She'll be 12. I want to say in August, and she's slowing down. And then you got Nisa. She is the Doberman.
Okay, I love that. Yeah, my other 2, the lab and the beagle, they're both 12 years old. And the lab acts it, but I mean, even when we got him when he was younger, he acted like an old man. So that's just who he is. Yeah. But all right. I will stop talking about puppies for now. I'm sure we will come back because it's puppies. I always say. I should just have a podcast talking about puppies and kitties and horsies and all of the other things, except rats. Never.
Yeah.
We had rats in the house, so never rats.
Yeah, Jordan was a rat killer because there are rats in Vegas, and they hang out in the palm trees. They eat the fruit up there. And well, when she was younger, she killed a few of them. That was good.
We could have used her in my house over the winter. I think we've got rid of them all. Knock on wood. But yeah. So let's talk about Vic's journey and how COVID saved you, I guess, in a sense.
Yeah. So my background is in production, and I went to school, as I said, at Syracuse and got my degree in TV and film production. Nice. And then after freezing up there, I went south to Florida to thaw out, and I got my master's in film production as well. So I have 6 years of higher education of a degree of degrees you don't need that for in production, but I did it. I was also teaching college down in South Florida, and cool. I was working in the corporate side, corporate and commercial, and it was, production was what I went to school for, but it wasn't very fulfilling. I wanted to make TV shows. I wanted to make movies, and the only place you could do that is in LA. And around the time the millennium was hitting, I had met a model that we had took down to one of our shoots down in Jamaica, and we hit it off, and she says, I'm going to move to LA. Why don't you come with me? And I said, that's a great idea. Now, at this point, I'm about 27 years old, was a professional doing all this stuff. So when I go to LA, long story short, it was one of those crash and burn Hollywood stories where my shows didn't get made. At some point during it, my girlfriend stopped working because she wanted to be Feminem, the first white female rapper. And I thought it was a great idea. And we were funding our dreams on credit cards, my credit cards specifically. So you start accumulating all this debt thinking that your dreams and something's going to hit, but it never did. And so you need money. So I answered an ad on adultstaffing.com. There was a Mexican kid who was looking to shoot a porn movie. And I bullshitted him. And I told him that I can help him. And I mean, I could, and I did. And that was my first day. That was April of 2002.
Okay, so you said you bullshitted him, but that you
Yes.
could. So where was the bullshit? Because you clearly went to school for this stuff. Like,
Right.
obviously you had the knowledge.
Well, I told him I shot porn before, which wasn't true.
Okay, so you bullshitted
Yeah.
the experience side.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, yeah, and I got my crash course that day. We shot 4 scenes in a condo in the valley, and I mean, it was a crash course basically. But that day, I made
Hold
one.
on.
Yes,
We got somebody.
that
Oh,
that is Junior.
okay, you can
Hi,
keep going. Sorry,
hi,
he
Junior.
interrupted.
Yeah, yeah. So basically, that day started a whole chain of events where I met other people and I learned where you chase leads if you want to be a content producer, which is what I was. And eventually, we couldn't stay afloat in LA, so I went back to Florida and I was working again in corporate, but the porn snowball had already started. And the thing
Okay.
is when you are shooting in a corporate world as an independent contractor, you may work a day, but you might get paid for that day a month, 2 months, 2 months down the road.
Okay, hard to
Oh,
plan your bills.
right. So with porn, you got all your money before you shot one frame of video. So
Oh, so very different. So you're paid up front.
yeah,
Okay.
and yeah, that it just became a no-brainer because you put bids on a job, you underbid everyone, you include more services, but the truth is I was providing a service more than other people were, and I wasn't messing with people's money. So the reputation started going around that
Yeah.
that Vic Lagina is a quality content producer that won't steal your money. And so I continued on and I was grinding. But the thing is, the whole point of going back to Florida was to get out of debt. And in about a year, I only knocked out about 3 grand out of that $30,000 debt because
Oh, what?
my
Yeah.
girlfriend was obsessing about her non-existent music career. So while I'm grinding to support us both, she's taking bong rips on our futon because we couldn't even afford a couch. And yeah, it got kind of contentious. But one thing happened was I met the guys who would eventually become Brazzers. Brazzers was going to essentially take over the entire porn industry.
Okay.
And once the girlfriend left me because I was such a cranky bastard to live with because she was just a leech that was like standing on my shoulders when I'm trying to stay afloat and drowning.
Yeah.
Um, so she leaves, and I set some goals. And January, February, March, I'm making those goals, and my debt starts going down. And eventually, in 10 months, when I gave myself 12 months to get out of debt, my debt is gone. And now I have this fledgling business. And now you say, okay, do you go back to corporate commercial, a ordinary pedestrian life, or
Mm-hmm.
Monty, what's behind door number two? And so the guys at Brazzers, who were young guys, they were younger than me and they knew how to market porn on the internet. They said, look, if you can tap into the LA talent pool, we will
Hmm.
keep you very busy.
Okay.
And I didn't want to live in LA again because LA, a lot of bad memories, but the truth
Yeah.
is it's a hard town to live in and an expensive town to live in.
Mm.
So I decided to set up shop. Where else? Where else can you take a big gamble? Las Vegas. And I bought this giant house and with the whole sole purpose of shooting porn within it and expecting, look, I could sell the house for a profit. Vegas is booming. But what happened 2 years later after I get into Las Vegas in 2006? The housing bubble bursts,
Oh
and now
no.
I've got this expensive house with this crazy mortgage. So thankfully, the porn industry was there, and these guys were booming, and there wasn't a shortage of work from the time I set foot in Vegas until the time COVID hit. So
Okay.
I was working and I was grinding and I was saving my money and I was reducing my mortgage and I was doing all of the right things. But this leads to the topic in conversation is what was it doing to my mind? And a couple bad relationships here and there because it's not easy to have relationships in the porn industry. But yeah,
Hmm.
you start substance abuse. I will never say that I was an addict because I was able to get away from it when I needed to.
Hmm.
But yeah, I would say a lot of it was we were busy, and the best way to get energized is to snort a lot of cocaine. So that's what I was
So,
doing. Yeah.
how long were you in the industry before that point?
So I'd say about 8 years. 8 years.
Okay.
8 years and two really bad relationships later.
Which probably did not help the mental state.
Especially not the second relationship where I was engaged to her. She was not a good person. She was a pathological liar, really. And we were pregnant twice. She miscarried twice, one late term. But the thing is that I look at signs that you get from the universe. And after that second miscarriage, it was like the universe was like, okay, Vic, I don't know what else to tell you. You're not supposed to be with this girl. Get out while you can.
Yeah.
And
I
so
mean,
that was
yeah,
the moment. Yeah.
right. I mean, a miscarriage is never a good thing.
Right.
I put that out there, but
Right.
a little bit of a blessing in disguise for your situation specifically.
Certainly. Certainly. And that was it. And, I won't get into the specifics of the relationship unless you want to, but there was a lot of lying, a lot of deceit. My family got involved in a lot of that. And, it's one thing to take on a relationship that is your drama when your drama bleeds on to your family and they are affected by it. I mean, I harbored some guilt on that one, and I'm sure all of it together, that led to the first little, gram bag of cocaine. And then that one little bag starts into 8 balls. And then, you start just getting on that cocaine train, and it's a vicious cycle. And it is. And it
Mm-hmm.
changes the dynamic of your brain and how you think. And it was bad for a while, until I started sitting down and writing the book, which was more like a journal. But at that point, I had been in the business for about 13 years, had a couple crazy relationships. And it was like, let's get it out of your brain into a tangible form. And one
Mm-hmm.
thing happened was I realized what a shit show my life was, and it was time to make better choices. And that started the whole path of getting out of the darkness and battling to get to and stay in the light.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So there's a whole lot there,
Yeah,
which is good.
yeah,
I'm gonna pick apart a couple little things. So,
sure.
um, because I think it's important that we we let the listeners know that, because you're talking about the bad relationship seeping into other things,
Mhm.
right? And
Yep.
I mean, I've had a lot of other guest talks specifically about relationships, so we don't necessarily need to talk about that particular thing, but I think the idea of it seeping into the other, like your other family members and that kind of thing, how do you bring it back out of them? I'm very visual, so I'm picturing like what's that movie called? Fern Gully, where the goo is like
Mhm.
spreading and like you have
Yeah.
to suck it all back up.
Mhm.
So how can you manage to, because you even talked about how there's some guilt there. How do you manage rebuilding that trust with your family or whatever was lost, right? How do you rebuild that after that?
Well, I went through, I'd say, three dysfunctional relationships. First one was in Miami, a cokehead doctor, okay, and it was a very contentious one. And then the white female rapper, where she had a lot of trauma at birth, so she was looking at it as a way like she was owed something by the world
Mm,
because of what she was suffered. And, that held her back in a lot of ways. And the last doozy, which was like the worst of the worst, I kept on going down these bad paths. And I didn't grow up around relationship dysfunction. My family, my mother, my father had a very loving relationship. The trauma that I had was she died when I was 15 years old. So
aw,
I had to deal with that at a very crucial time
yeah,
at a man's growth. And I
yeah,
didn't have a strong female role model to guide me in a lot of ways. And
mhm,
I think, going back to your question, my father at some point said to me, "Is like, what is it with you and needing these dysfunctional relationships? I don't understand it. And he was absolutely right. So
Yeah.
how did I keep the ooze from spreading? Well, once I realized how much it affected my family, I swore up and down to myself. And also, I had gone through the ringer emotionally with this
Of
engagement.
course.
And like you have that one relationship that you compare to, that you say, I'm never going to that depth again of darkness.
Mm.
And
Hmm.
so, and I swore by it. And, she was living with me. So it came to, if I'm ever going to be in a relationship again, which I was after that, even though that had dysfunction, it was nowhere near as toxic as it was before in the other ones. But we didn't live together. I wasn't going to allow it to be in my personal space. And I made sure, and I told my family this, I said, I will never let one of my relationships affect you ever again because it's not fair to you.
Yes.
So that was how I kept it from spreading. And, I had to really deal with, okay, there's two facets. You start either having casual relationships with those in the porn industry, which has, mixed results, especially when you're keeping most people at arm's length, you know,
Yeah.
because there's toxicity there, there's trauma there, there's bad things. But on the same end, it's companionship, it's great sex. Let's not skirt around that issue. But the truth is, it's like you also have to get comfortable being alone. A lot of people will get into bad relationships because they don't want to be alone. And I was one of them.
Yes. That was my brother.
Mhm.
Um, and I've skated around the issue with my mom because she doesn't want to hear it. And ultimately, there's not much to be said. My brother died a few years ago from a drug
Sorry.
overdose.
Mhm.
Um, but that was one of the things is he always got into bad relationships. And it tends to be when you don't work on yourself, because you clearly have worked on yourself.
Mhm.
When you don't work on yourself, you kind of keep going into the same types of relationships, the
Yep.
same types of mistakes. Might
Yep.
not be the exact same one, but they're going to be within the realm of the same type of things until
Certainly.
you do the work to not continue the same cycle.
Yeah, you break the pattern essentially is what I was doing. But it was very
Yeah.
hard to do it while in an industry that's full of like I'll use a Yiddish term, mishigas, which is like all of these it's just a lot of just insanity, issues, trauma,
Mhm.
dysfunction, and all of that. So it's really hard to be around it and
Mhm.
working through it and stay completely grounded. And even though I started, weaning myself off the cocaine and, dabbling more into the more therapeutic drugs, the psilocybin, the LSD, that was more my therapy. That and
Mhm.
live music and being around positive people who lift you up instead of bring you down. And there wasn't many people, especially in Vegas, but also in the porn industry. So, I have my personal space, I have my dogs, and that enabled me to keep that balance. But it
Mhm.
wasn't really until I left the porn industry that really you start healing and getting better and being the most complete and the best version of yourself, which is where I am currently.
Awesome. Okay, so
Yeah.
we're gonna get back to that, but a
Mhm.
question has been niggling in my brain.
Sure.
Um, because when you meet people, one of
Mhm.
the main questions is, "Hey, what do you do?"
Mhm.
And I don't know because I've never been in the industry, but I did read your screening questions. So
Okay.
one of them is, "Have you experienced any stigma?"
Mhm.
Um, was that around having people say, "What do you do?" And, "Oh, I'm in the porn industry." Like, what are people's reactions when that would happen?
So there was a time there, especially including with my family, that I just lied and I said I was back in the corporate side of things to
Oh, okay.
not have to deal with things. But when you come from the family background I have, when you've got a stepmother who is very persistent in the questioning,
It's a
then
mom thing.
yeah, you have to then continue spinning these yarns about things. And that just got exhausting, to be honest.
Yeah.
So there was a certain point, especially after the relationship with the ex-fiance and everything is on the table, where I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to lie anymore. If someone's got a problem with it, then that's their problem. It's not my problem.
Yeah.
So usually the situations were like an airplane, for instance. You sit
Yeah.
on an airplane, and if you don't have your headphones on and your shades on, that leaves you open to the question by the person next to you. And
Yes.
I would get those questions a lot, and one of two things would happen. You'd see it in their eyes right away, whether you're being judged. And if someone didn't approve of your life and your choices, then the conversation ended, and I thought, great, I don't have to talk to you. You're not cool anyway, so we're fine. But what would happen is other people would be like, they look at me and they go, I've got so many questions. And it was kind of cool in a lot of ways. And so now when that happens, I give them a sticker, which has a QR code, and I say, buy my book. It'll answer all of those questions. Yeah. Yeah. So there was a stigma, but you just have to be comfortable in your own skin. I could tell you growing up, I was not comfortable in the skin suit that was assigned to me. And it took some time to
that's
become
a very
comfortable.
common
Yeah.
thing.
But after a while you do. And then you just get to the point where you're like, I'm just going to be me. I'm going to do me. And those that are attracted to my energy will be attracted. Those repelled will be repelled. But I will find my people that way. And lo and behold, I did.
Yes. Oh,
Yeah.
excellent. Because I was like, ever since you first messaged me on Podmatch, I'm like, I need to answer this question.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, that's really it. If someone's really buttoned up and they really have a problem with it, then I'm at the point now where I would push a little bit and be like, so what's the issue? What, you never watched any porn before? I have, and I would start pressing.
So here's the thing.
Mm.
Females, we like to read it.
Yeah. I
We
gather.
don't watch it. We like
Right.
to read it and use our own imaginations.
Yeah, that's why the erotica section is very popular, from what I was told.
Exactly. And we just call them romance because it makes
Okay.
us feel better, but
Okay. Yep.
we read it.
Yeah.
Ah.
Yeah.
My husband always makes that joke to me because there's certain authors that have it more than others, right? And he's like, oh, you're reading one of your books again, aren't you? One of those ones.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, what? It's good. Shut up.
Yeah, no, I learned that at a book convention I went to, that's a huge market, and perhaps I should delve into that, but we'll see. I don't know.
Yeah, you would definitely have an interesting take on it, but whether or not what your knowledge can translate into the wording that would be appealing to the audience, that's who knows.
Yeah.
But yes, as females, we don't like to watch it. We like to read it, but pretend like we don't.
Right.
So anyways, going a little shifting closer to nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
You talked about getting out of the industry, and that was during COVID. So in Canada, COVID lasted like a million years.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
when abouts was it that you finally that you couldn't do what you were doing and kind of had to shift to something else?
So I'll tell you, it started crumbling, let's call it around the Me Too movement, because porn really didn't escape Me Too. I always ran my sets professionally, ethically. It was all consensual. We had a lot of safeguards in place. We had incoming interviews with someone I was shooting that day. And everyone we got through was through agencies that we had relationships with. These were people that wanted to be in the porn industry. And we had exit interviews to make sure the day went well. And there were words like, no, stop, cut, if a line was crossed. And then you regroup, you communicated. But what I was finding is that, look, were there bad people in the industry? Of course. And were they called out during the Me Too movement? Of course. But it was also getting a little slippery when you had the younger generation of performers that grew up on iPads and iPhones and texting, and they are adults having sex consensually on camera, but they don't have the fundamentals to communicate as their predecessors did. And that to me got a little dicey. And it was getting more and more dicey where there would be things happening where I would shoot a scene and None of those words are said during the scene. The exit interview is fine. Everything seems to be okay. But then you hear something later that they had a bad
Mm,
shoot and they tweet about it or they do anything. And you're like, okay, now the rules aren't making any sense. So it was
yeah.
starting to crumble around then. And I was finding that the younger generation, like I was done, let's say in my mid to late 40s, okay? And some of the performers I was shooting, they were like 20, 21, 22. So if you think about that, that could be a father's age and a daughter's age. And
Yeah.
now you have a couple generations gone by where this generation doesn't understand this generation. And when the company started validating a lot of their excuses for not being able to speak up on set, that's when I was like, okay, now you're treating adults in the adult industry with kid gloves, and I think that's very dangerous. And
Yes.
and
Very
and
dangerous.
so I was like, maybe it's time to go. But I was over it because the third ownership, and you know, you being Canadian, maybe you know this, but they're based in Montreal. They were,
Oh, I didn't
yeah,
know that.
the first version of the company was called Manseth. These were the frat bros that started it. Then a guy who created this tracking software bought it. They rebranded into Manwin, and then he got arrested for tax evasion. And so people within the company and people outside the company bought his shares. They rebranded again to Mindgeek. And they got into big trouble. And then they sold, and now they're called ALO. Yeah. And you have to understand this whole corporation, this umbrella, they own Pornhub, they own all of virtually everything in the porn industry. They're essentially the porn monopoly. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So the third ownership, the ones that got into really big trouble, they sucked all the joy from the job. And I really grew to, I don't want to say hate them because I don't like using that word,
I
but
dislike strongly.
despise them.
Oh,
Yeah.
I like that's a good word.
Yeah, so you know, you have to eat your shit sandwiches with a smile, act like a team
Mm,
player, and that just got old. And when it was like over, you look at your finances, you look at the moves you made, you look at the fact that you lowered your overhead. Can you survive without this job? Can you shed the personality that you once were as this director for Brazzers? And that was kind of the interesting part of life after porn. But
yeah.
but that's what ended it. And to be honest, when those weeks of COVID, months of COVID, I was waking up happy again.
Oh.
When I would wake up and I'm like, I can't believe I got to do this job again. And you know,
Mhm.
the money was good. The money is what kept me in it because I equated it to stability, and it was. But
Yeah.
you don't think about at what price is this stability costing you.
Yeah.
And it was. And I say this with, it's not like I stopped doing the bad drugs, but let's say I continued on with this. If I had another couple of years, who knows if I would still be here, you know, because
Right.
fentanyl could have gotten me, you
Well, that's
know?
just it. It takes one bad hit,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? That's
It,
the thing.
it happened to my buddy. I lost a buddy from it.
Mhm.
And I was warning all my friends. I'm like, we all have to stop doing this because it could be the last time, you know, we'll ever do the drug and see each other. So, and I hate that I was right. But I was right. And he has his own page in my book of, you know,
Oh,
yeah, because, you know, the message is like, be careful out there if you're going to
yes,
do this, you know.
exactly. So as you're kind of being finished with the industry and trying to basically figure out what the heck you're going to do now,
Yeah.
what do you want to do when you grow up?
Right.
Um, what was kind of going through your mind at the time?
Well, one thing while I was in it was like, whatever I do after this is not going to be as interesting, you know, like
Oh,
that's
that's probably
because,
true.
right. Because every day was different, even though it could have been a different shit show as, you know, the week before or whatever. And we did
Mhm.
have some good shoots. Um, it was definitely a unique job. But
Yeah.
here's the thing, like all the work I was doing was to build a home that I was comfortable in,
Mhm.
my bubble of bliss, so to speak. And when I was able to hang out with it all day and hang with my dogs and read and feed the brain and get better at the piano, it was really mulling, what am I going to do next? And one of the smart things I did was when the third iteration of the company told me to downsize my studio, I really took a huge leap of faith and took a big swing and bought that second studio, and I didn't tell them. And they were
Oh.
paying my mortgage for a while until the whole relationship severed. And then once I was completely done with it, I sold the building and the tenant for double what I paid for it in 6.5 years. And so with all that I did, I had the luxury of trying to figure out what comes next. So then it was like, okay, what do we do? And that was when the idea was, let's turn the journal of this crazy journey into a good book, and let's share this story with the masses. And that's exactly
Mhm.
what I did. And that's, what I did. And the whole time now has just been promoting it and talking about it,
That's
and just
fantastic.
seeing what comes next.
That's fantastic.
Yeah,
So
thank you.
journaling, I mean, I know you started it many years ago,
Hmm.
eventually turned into a book, and we'll talk about the book a little bit.
Right.
Um, but when you started journaling, and I know you a little bit mentioned this already, but journaling is such a huge coping strategy that
Hmm.
people sometimes don't even realize. Like when I
Hmm.
started writing way back as a teenager, I didn't realize that it's a coping strategy.
Yeah.
I was just like, I'm gonna write. So how did that help you as you were still in the industry and then of course coming out of the industry?
I'd say, when you recap a lot of the insanity, you realize that this is not sustainable at all. And it's time to make better choices if you're going to land this flaming Airbus in one piece. So, yeah, that was really it. And what would happen is, I would write and then I would set it aside. And then whenever we would shut down, if someone popped positive for HIV and we had a moratorium, I would go back to it and I would continue like adding to it. But like I didn't know where it would end until the story of Vic Lagina essentially ended when COVID hit and my relationship with Brazzers severed. And then sitting back and then, reflecting upon everything and making sense of it all and understanding that when you're trying to find relationships and meaningful relationships in the porn industry, you can understand that you're fetching your water from a tainted well where it's not
That's
going to
a good
make
analogy.
yeah, you're not going to be whole if you're doing it. So yeah, the whole thought was, okay, you got out and be thankful of it. But it was also, recapping it. Because look, my journey was definitely an interesting one. And could it
Yeah, sounds it.
sustain a reader? Probably. But I wasn't sure. So what I did was I started writing about side topics about the industry. So if people want to divert from my shit show in existence, they can learn about this, that, or the other thing. But one of the things was I talk about the people who died that I knew in the industry
Mhm.
and recapping and reading their obituaries and understanding how much pain they were in. And some died from overdoses, some died by suicide, some died from other means. But the truth is that the common thread was pain, and a lot of that pain, especially if you're a sensitive individual, even though I can come off as pretty stoic, I absorb a lot of these energies.
Mhm.
And that too was the reason why I was medicating, because I needed to shield and numb myself from what I was coming into every day at work.
Yes.
So I saw that. I saw it what it was. And, look, I couldn't be a whole person while I was in the industry. There's no way. But
Mhm.
now I'm doing good. So it's a happy ending in a
That
happy
is
porn story, which is rare.
porn story.
Yeah.
That should be the subtitle of your book.
Yeah.
Happy porn
Yeah.
story.
Yeah.
So again, a lot to unpack there. A couple
Yeah.
key things is you couldn't be a full person while you were there, right? Like you couldn't live your best self while you were there, and that you were medicating. And from many of the interviews that I've done, because we've talked to many people around the world, that is the common theme when it comes to using drugs or alcohol or even food, for those that have an eating disorder.
Or
Very,
sex.
yeah, I have yet to talk to one of them yet.
Yeah.
That's why I didn't
Well,
mention it, but yes, it does
yeah.
happen.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
but where was I going? Yeah, so any kind of addiction, really, right? There's so many out there. But of the ones that I've talked to, the common theme is that they are medicating from some reason, whether it's from a depression, anxiety, not knowing who they are, trying to fill a void is the common theme throughout everyone I've talked to with a type of addiction or eating disorder, which is very much similar to addiction in what they're trying to do, and filling that void somehow. And you don't necessarily even know the void is there until sometimes you stop and you look back and go, oh, yeah, that's why I did what I did, or that's why I felt I needed to do what I did. And now that I'm able to look back and contemplate and journal and maybe therapy and whatever else it is that you're doing to help yourself, you're able to work through those things instead of using those other things to medicate it. But that is the common theme, is that hole in you of not being your whole self.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And that was the light went off when I was writing about the people who died. And I was like, oh, like I thought I was doing it because, harboring some guilt about my bad relationships. And, you can make the excuse too that it does give you energy, especially when you've got all of these shoots that you have to do and you have to keep these late hours and things like that. But it really was a protection, defense mechanism in a lot of ways to shield myself. And then being away from it, you're like, okay, I get it now. I get why I was doing it. And I have no desire to do all of that. Will I enjoy a glass of wine with my girlfriend? Of course. Will I have a nice edible to have a nice little mellow, vibe about me? Sure. But what I was finding too was with LSD or mushrooms or any of that, to me, it was like a hard reboot. When you're getting yourself a little too wrapped up in this realm, it's a good way to remind yourself that there is a greater energy out there that you need to tap into, and that we are all connected, and let's not get bogged down in the negativity of this realm. And so that is what was good for me. But I rarely even have to do that anymore because I just wake up feeling happy next to a woman that I love very dearly. So it's
not next to the puppies.
Well, those two, yeah. Well, the Doberman sleeps in the bed, of course, and then sometimes Junior is. But even though it's a king, it gets kind of crowded in there.
I know. Yeah, me and my husband, we don't sleep in the same bed because it's too full of puppies, and there's no space for him. He needed to leave. No, that's not actually the reason that it started, but that is the reason that it continues, because now you're not welcome back into this bed. It's full of puppies. He sleeps with the kitties. And so it works out very well, because I don't want to hear his 50 alarms at 6 a.m.
Okay. All right. Well, at least it's not snoring. So that's where, like, I'll wake up sometimes, she'll be gone because my snoring is really bad. So I'm like, sorry, babe, I'm trying. I got to figure this out. But
he's not a snorer, but he used to, like, he would roll over and then you're face to face, right? And he'd go,
yeah.
And I'm like,
morning breath.
But he's one of those kinds of people that need, like, seriously 10 different alarms. And I'm one of those people that if I snooze it, I will snooze it once. And even then I don't usually, like, the alarm is off, I'm getting up. No. He will set 10 alarms to wake himself up in time to go. And I'm just like, no, you get the out of the bed. So, we're lucky now that we have a house where there's enough space where we can do that, because back when we were at the townhouse, I would end up on the couch, or better off I'd kick him out and he would end up on the couch. But we're lucky now that we have that space. And I much prefer my puppies over my husband.
Absolutely.
That's funny. When it comes to actually having a real sleep, except when they decide, again, totally off topics because puppies, except when they decide, like last night, the beagle had to go pee at midnight, which is fine, whatever. She's old, she's got a little bladder. Usually I have to go in the middle of the night too, so no big deal. Okay, let's get up, because I went to bed at like 9 last night. And so I take her out, she goes pee, come back in, go back to sleep. 4 a.m, the shepherd decides he needs to pee, and I'm like, seriously? Like, I wake up in an hour and a half. You couldn't have just held it? Really? Yeah, it's very frustrating. I'm like, no, we pee once in the middle of the night. Either we all go together or you hold it. But we're doing this once. So
this sounds very familiar.
Right? I think anyone with multiple puppies understand, but it's like we go once, guys, once in the middle of the night. Very frustrating. And then if you get the old man in on it, and then he's just his own other thing, but that's all right. We love him because he's an old fart. I digress often. So again, you look like you're doing awesomely. So how do you continue? Like, where are you at now? I know the book is you're promoting the book and everything. How do you, now that the book is done and you don't have to journal about that specific time in your life, what are you doing now to keep yourself in the good spirits?
Well, I like working outside. I like getting better at the piano. People do ask me, do you have any more? I want to read more of your stuff. So now I have that whole thing of, okay, do I want to, the thing is, here's the catch-22 about it. I've been trying to shed the Vic Lagina thing and leave it in the past because Vic Lagina was created to shoot porn. And that was what I, did during that time. And I really tried to close the chapter of that. But it's very hard to when people want to hear more stories.
Well, you're the one that went and wrote a book about it.
I know, it's true. So the question then becomes is, do I record more of these stories? Because I did do the audio book. Do I do something completely different? Do I just sit and bide my time and just wait until that unique situation of an opportunity comes along, which it will, because I've always had, these chance occurrences where you meet someone and they're like, wow, you seem cool. Would you like to do this? And my thing was, look, I worked for people I couldn't stand for a very long time, doing something I really wasn't crazy about. So I will take a lot less money to do something that I would really enjoy doing, especially if I respect that person. So we'll see what happens there. But the book is kind of taking a life of its own. People are enjoying it. They enjoy talking to me. This whole world we live in with podcasts and this and that, it's just creating more opportunities down the road where, hey, you should talk to this person. You should talk to this. Oh, wait, this agent wants to talk to you. Oh, okay, cool. And I'm like, all right, let's just see where this thing goes. So I've learned to be just very present, to live in the now, to really not worry about the future, because financially, I don't really have to worry as long as I'm smart about it.
Must be nice.
Well, it was like the way I see it, I earned that because I grinded for so long dealing with a lot of shit that would break a lot of people. Yeah. But then the whole thing too is like, I just like being around my girlfriend and the dogs and figuring things out, whatever's going to come next, and just being present. I think it's very underappreciated being present and living in the now, because a lot of people are hung up about the past and maybe guilt or things that regrets they may have.
Change.
Right. And they have so much anxiety about the future, which they can't control anyways. There's very few things that people control. And the sooner that people get a grasp on that and just being like, wait, you're here right now. Just be 100% present. Like we're talking right now. Well, I'm solely focused on this and making it as wonderful as it possibly can be. So if people can do that.
And it is.
Yeah, good. Great. Mission accomplished. So, but beyond that, I don't know. I'll figure it out. Like there are options. There are things to do. I'm a creative. I will keep creating and doing things just to kind of have a jolly existence.
I like that. Yeah. And it is one of the hardest things to master is being in the now, especially with all the, and I'm not going to get political or anything, but with all the stuff that happens around you. And if you go on if you turn on any radio station or TV or social media, you're getting this is happening and this is happening in the news and the politics and the this and the that. And it's like, whoa, let me just take a step back. I cannot control any of this stuff. Let me breathe and come back to me and what is within my control and within, because it can be very scary if you let all of the news of everything happening get to you. So it's very tricky to do, stay in the now.
Yeah, it is. But like I said, with a lot of time, I've had time to read. and read some good books. And I mean, I'm always reading something now. Like there was times where I couldn't read. A lot of people like audiobooks. I'm not an audiobook guy. I want to physically read a book, which is why I made sure mine is great, looks good and feels good and is well put together in your hands. But it's just been very educational over the last 5 years. As a matter of fact, it was yesterday, 5 years ago, when this whole pandemic started, and that was my last shoot for Brazzers. Yeah, 5 years. And I reflected on it, and I look back, I was like, you've come a long way in those 5 years. From where you were to where you are now, and you've accomplished a lot. You should be happy, you should be proud, and you should be grateful of exactly where you landed. Because, you know, I've seen too many of the stories that end sadly, and I'm glad I wasn't one of them.
Yeah, me too. This is a great conversation.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, so the book.
Yes.
The book. What is it called? Oh, there it is.
Yeah, so it's called Filthy, The Rise and Pending Death of Vic Lagina.
Oh, pending death. I like that.
Well, you know, it was very interesting with that because we're all pending, you know? And the truth is that there's no rational reason for this, but I always had this feeling that I might not be long for this world, you know, for no reason other than it was just an idea I have in my head. Like physically, health-wise, all of that, I'm fine. But the whole point of it was, if I should perish, it would be a real shame if I don't get this story out. So that was the driving force behind it. And I guess for the title as well. I do kill Vic Lagina in my book at the end. I do.
Dare you?
Well, it's a way of a metaphorical shedding of the ego or of that persona. So, you know, you could tell, like, I think about things. I'm pretty cerebral, and I wanted to get that across in the book. So that's what it's called. If you go to my website, viclagina.com, not only can you see this trailer that I shot for the book, but the link to my audiobook, which I read, which was a very fun process putting together. Like, it's my kind of weird. And if someone wants to go on a journey and they don't have time to read a book, which I get because we're all very busy, and you want to listen to it during your commute or traveling, spin it on Spotify. It's on there.
Or if you're weird like me and do it while you work out.
Yes, you could do that as well. But that was a fun process, and I put it all together myself. Like, being from production, it was my obsession once the lawyers got done with the book, because I'm brutally honest in the book, and I wanted to be sure that I wrote it in such a way that would deflate any kind of ideas about a lawsuit, especially from my crazy ex-fiance, who definitely resurfaced, as she tends to do, when she heard I was writing a book. Yeah, but the thing is with lawyers, they're smart. They tell you, okay, just remember these words: not easily identifiable. So if you do that, then they really, unless, like, even if she jumps up and down and says, I'm that person, well, you can't sue someone because you just outed yourself, you know?
Right, exactly. You didn't say who it was. She's out in her side.
Exactly. So that was it. But that's the audiobook. The book itself, again, a lot of thought, front cover, back cover, the way it's set up, everything, the layout. I put time, money, because if you're going to charge the public for their hard earned dollars, you have to deliver a product that is worth those dollars. So I felt I did that. 8.5 years was the entire process from start to finish.
Wow, very nice.
Yeah. So I put my blood, sweat, tears, soul, all of it in this project. So if you like to support and you want to really understand what it was like to walk in my shoes for those 20 years, pick up a copy. It's on Amazon as well.
Well, I was going to say, where do you get it? So there you go. Yeah. And where do people follow you?
So if you go, I'm on X and I am on Instagram at Vic Lagina. I don't really have a TikTok yet because I didn't want to build one only for it to go away. So I left that alone.
Right. They were getting rid of it in the States.
Right. Yeah. But it may come back. or it may stay for a while. They're working all that out. And I never was a Facebook guy because I thought it was a very bad idea. So you can find me on there, X and Instagram, and I love interacting with people who've read the book, and people have been very kind so far about it.
Nice. Excellent.
Yeah,
Well, thank you so much for being on the show and sharing.
of course.
I'll admit, when you first messaged me and you're like, in the porn industry, I'm like, this is either going to go really, really bad or really, really good.
Yeah.
And it went really, really good. So there we go.
Well, I'll tell you, I'm kind of an anomaly in the porn industry. You're not really going to find this a person like me, a unique persona like me in the industry. Usually very one-dimensional, very self-involved, self-important. I tried to be the opposite of that, so I'm glad I went against your initial fears.
Yeah, I was just like, oh no. But it was good because you were completely upfront. This is what it is that I can talk about. And I'm just like, all right, if you're going to be upfront, my show is all about being honest and open. So let's do it.
Let's do it.
So excellent. Well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing. I guess it's almost your dinner time now. It's almost my bedtime. It's almost your dinner time.
Yeah. Getting around that time. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm sure the puppies are counting down. They know.
Oh, they eat so well. My girlfriend spoils them so much. So yeah, it's a lot of healthy food around here. They're doing well.
Excellent. That's the important part. I mean, I don't care if you eat. It's important that puppies
Yeah,
know.
exactly.
So thank you again for being on the show, and hopefully everything. Not hopefully. I know everything will continue to go well.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
As always, thank you so much for the amazing guests that we have on the show. Be sure to check out their links down in the description below. If you want to support the channel, go ahead and check out our merch store. We've got some very cool things on there. That's my favorite. Sorry, I'm busy ending the stigma. But there's some other very cool designs. 10% of the proceeds always goes back to the Canadian Mental Health Association. Be sure to follow us on Facebook at RB Media because we have some great new shows coming up and you never want to miss any of those episodes. And remember, the only way to end the stigma of mental health is to speak openly and honestly. Bye!